Thank you, Dr. Abhijit. Good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, I'm Adarsh. I'll give you a brief introduction about KTech Center of Excellence in Internet of Things, otherwise IoT, powered by NASSCOM. So NASSCOM Center of Excellence is the largest deep tech innovation ecosystem in India, comprising of startups, innovators, enterprises, and the government. We focus on solving real-world challenges using technologies like IoT, AI, data center, data science, big data, machine learning, robotics. So KTech Center of Excellence is the Bangalore arm of NASSCOM Center of Excellence IoT. It is supported by Government of Karnataka and was started in 2016. Till date, we have incubated 150 plus startups, and we engage with startups on funding, incubation, acceleration, mentor support, and enterprise connect. We help in raising money from investors, working with mentors and experts, and connecting with enterprises for paid engagements. And we are happy to co-host today's session with St. John's Health Innovation Foundation, and we're looking forward to today's session. We'll talk to Mr. Dr. Thank you.
Okay. Am I audible? So on now. Okay. Right. People at the back, please, if you want to shift to the front, so that you don't fall asleep. All right. I'll do a quick self-introduction about myself. So, my name is Harsh. I'm building a company called IP5. We are into intellectual property consulting, mainly providing services and consulting in the areas of patents, trademarks, legal compliance of open source software, and any other legal support, legal or technical support that startups need. So I am also heading the intellectual property rights cell at a national level with MSME and Startups Forum Bharat, which was set up a couple of years back, and now they are working towards building an ecosystem where they can get the startups and MSMEs under a single umbrella. So apart from that, I'm also a mentor with various startup ecosystems. Again, across the country, we work with startups from NASSCOM, Vadodara Startup Studio, Link Innovations, Deshpande Startups, to name a few. So yeah, that's a brief introduction about me, and I'm registered to practice as a patent agent with the Indian Patent Office, and I've also taken the US patent bar, so I'm familiar with the US. I have worked in the European jurisdiction also, because prior to starting my firm, I was with SAP and predominantly working with the Indian jurisdiction last 3 years. So this is my background. So before we jumpstart and begin with the session, so I just want to understand the background of the crowd here. What kind of background do you hold and understanding about intellectual property? Starting from you, sir. You can.
Okay. Yeah. I'm from that information. Understanding is so. I don't have much of that.
What according to you all here who are sitting is intellectual property? I know few of them have attended my sessions previously. So you are, whatever you answered will be ignored. It is for people who have not attended or attending the first time or trying to get a feel of what the session is and okay, tell me what is the objective of you guys attending the session today? What is that you're seeking? What is the outcome that you're seeking out of the session today? It is going to be interactive. I don't have any slides to present. This is the only slide I have. Okay, and a few people who have attended already know that, and I don't have a slide of 10 or 50 slides. I'm a one slide presenter man. So everything that you want to drool and look is in this one slide. Please.
So, I'm Jyoti Prabhu. I'm an associate professor at the Division of Molecular Medicine. I hope you recall that we had an
Yes.
interaction earlier.
Yes.
I had missed your earlier session, and that was the intention that I wanted to come and listen to you.
Okay.
In my interest, having done a couple of sessions earlier, have an idea of what it is like. But
Okay.
I don't know the gap of all intellectual property can be. I
Right.
know it's a very wide thing.
Right.
And I know that many things can be actually applied for what we call as intellectual property. So I want to understand the breadth of it.
Okay.
And then interesting thing about your talk is how to avoid it. So I want to know what the pitfalls that inventors like us have.
Right.
And then what is that we need to take as a precaution before we go ahead and fight for it or start lighting with someone.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
Comedians, I don't know more of these questions regarding the patents.
Right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Ashish. I'm founder of a healthcare startup. Nearby Government.
Okay.
So we have filed patents earlier for products. But during the last couple of years, we have developed more products. And we are in a state where we have to initiate the whole patent process.
Mhm.
And so how do you safeguard your whole whatever you have developed so far?
Right.
And what can you show, what you cannot show? So that is the expectation. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just wanted to know more about this economic non-obviousness.
That is a different topic. We won't
Yes.
address it.
Okay. How do we deal with this criteria, especially in LMIC or in the area of healthcare where we work? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's more to do with the regulatory thing,
Yeah.
process, how it works. So it will be a little out of topic for today. I'll try to address it towards the
Sure.
end, depending on the interest of the time, right? Okay, all right. So let's begin our discussion with defining what IP is. What is IP? What is intellectual property? You have to answer, right? I'm not going to, I told you, this is not a regular presentation where I'm going to present slides and share a lot of information on slides. This session is for you. It's not for me. Right? What is intellectual property? Whatever you know, you answer. Invention, novelty, yeah, that comes at a much later level. Basic, how do you define? How do you know what is or what qualifies as intellectual property? Yeah, go ahead.
Whatever ideas, so ideas we have, and we give a form to that, and we generate a content.
Mhm.
not just thoughts, like something we just put up the paper.
Is it restricted only to ideas or anything else? What else? When you say beyond, what else?
Should have the content and stuff in it and form. You give a form to that.
Okay. What else? How would you define IP?
You're building something. Yeah, you have built something and you wanted to protect the whole notion of that idea, or it could be a tangible or intangible. And probably going forward, you might need that idea to be commercialized. And where you get the whole protection from nobody else being copying or replicating this.
Okay. This is again at a much advanced level. Idea, commercialization, protecting comes at a later stage. What is intellectual property? Basic, very, very, very basic question.
The unique knowledge.
Right. It need not be engineering. See, it is anything that your mind is able to conceive or think of, right? Any thought, it can be a thought, it can be an expression, it can be a solution to a technical problem or just a problem. See, all these forms are intellectual property. All these are creations of your mind, and these creations of mind are intellectual property. So are these tangible or intangible? Why? And when does it become tangible? Right. When you give a form and structure to whatever you are thinking, whatever you are creating in your mind, it becomes tangible. And when you procure a right to protect it, it becomes an intellectual property right. So since your mind is able to conceive different types of thoughts or ideas or expressions or creations, there are different types of IPs to protect each type, right? We'll start with what are the common mistakes first time inventors do, right? First one is saying ignoring or overlooking documents. How many of you are familiar with this or have already done it? What documents am I referring to? The answer is there in the slide itself. Sorry? No.
Application.
It says under documents, right? It's agreements, contracts, and NDAs, right? When do you need to have these? For example,
You're working on a project, someone comes in,
right?
on a project with you, and as a result of the project, you're getting ideas on building some process for the system
Right.
or device. And you have to make sure that everyone who's there respects that.
Right. How do you protect that? Which document helps you protect that? Okay. Anything else? NDA helps protecting?
Especially the information before a patent, before filing a patent, that information could be leaked out.
Patent is only a form or a type of IP that you would file, right? Any thought or expression or idea or solution, it can be associated with research activities, or it can be just brainstorming, right? Anything that you share with your peers or colleagues or your employees, right? Or contractors or third party with whom you would work, all that can be protected through these 3 documents, right? So typically, two case scenarios I take. One is from the medical fraternity, the researchers that have interacted within St. John's. Most of them are doing research. They are collaborating with other people, sometimes other companies, third parties, and they don't know what part would constitute as IP. Most of them would go by leap of faith, right, in sharing information. But then, if the other party is smart enough, if they know how the process works, if they know what IP is, without your knowledge, that IP will get siphoned and they will go ahead and file it without your knowledge. So it's always good to have either an agreement or contract, and of course an NDA first, and then enter into an agreement or contract with such engagements, right?
Any other mean by which, other than documents, any other mean that we can protect IP may not be this document.
No, this is the first step. There is no other means. Anything that needs judicial recognition or validity has to be captured somewhere, right?
No, I mean, other than like, any supplementary thing can be done.
No, not really.
How does the NDA get?
Sorry,
How does the NDA get enforced?
NDA get enforced when you sign an NDA and you say that you can either list what specific information you are sharing, maybe at a very top level, not in details, or it can be a very generic NDA saying that whatever is the engagement and information shared is and will be treated as confidential and should not be shared by other party. So let's say you do that and then the other party uses that information. You can always go and press your charges or enforce your rights based on the NDA.
Is that the judicial system or is there a mechanism?
No, judicial system. It's just the regular court process that you'll have to go through. So it's a valid document. NDA is a valid document. You could consider putting a stamp value to it anywhere between 100 and 500 rupees. It will make it more stronger. But then you can have it on a plain paper as well. You can, both the parties have to read it and sign it and have it on a plain paper as well.
I didn't get the fee you mentioned, stamp paper value,
100 and 500, 100 or 500, anything in between them.
depending on the.
There is no factors. Anything is. Okay. So if you overlook this aspect when it comes to contracts or agreements, and let's say that whatever you share, the confidential information gets stolen or gets used without your knowledge, you will not be able to enforce or exercise your rights, right? You cannot go back and tell saying, this is what I shared with you, and the IP should belong to me. Everything has to be written. There should be watertight clauses within the contracts or agreements saying whatever IP emerges out will be your property, right? If you are only providing, let's say, data. So typical scenario that I've come across working with various researchers in St. John's as well as startups is you engage with a party either to get some information or some data, right? And you're trying to build some solution on top of it. So the party holder as such will not have any rights on the IP, right? Whoever is supplying information or data. So let's take an example here. You are a researcher, you are providing some information, some data. Also, you are providing some information that can constitute as a solution or intelligence, right? Only then you can claim your IP. Just because you are giving out data and the other party is using their own intelligence and building their own solution, you will not have any rights on the IP that they are going to create. So these things have to be clearly documented in the agreement or the contract that you're going to have, right? Typically with startups, this issue comes when there is conflict between co-founders, right? So there is no clear demarcation as to what is a trade secret, what is a patent, what is the IP. So identify your IP. I'll cover those things in that subtopic. So I work with a lot of startup ecosystems, right? A lot of venture capitalists nowadays, they come with a complaint saying that we have invested money. There's a conflict in the co-founders, between the co-founders. My money is stuck and they want to part ways. right? Nobody knows who owns the IP, what is the IP, where is the line that defines as this information or the solution constitutes as IP. So these are the challenges, right? So you need to have a exit agreement drafted first before even drafting a founders agreement when you're starting up. Please take this very seriously. You may find it very funny, but then this is going to be the most important document in a startup, right? When you're starting up, draft an exit agreement first before even putting together the terms of working with your co-founders. Always good to have NDAs and agreements and contracts with consultants, employees, any third parties that you work. Again, there should be watertight clauses related to IP, related to what would constitute as a trade secret, related to what would constitute as a patent or a trademark or any other type of IP for that matter, right? So this is the most important step that most first-time inventors, first-time startups, not even otherwise, even if they are not first-time startups, I've seen a lot of startups who have built and sold, but then they have never paid attention to this part of it, because unless there is a conflict, you will not know the seriousness of the document, right? Second one is failing to identify your IP. So, any examples, experiences that you can relate to, you can share. Let's take identify your IP. What is a trade secret? Trade secret. Whatever you know, you answer. Okay. What else?
Could be a method or process which enables something.
Okay. What else?
Think that unique thing that's involved in the solution. That's the part.
Okay. What else?
Something that has value, you have to see. You have to see.
No, that's what. Value in what sense?
Financial.
You're right. It should have some kind of economical value associated with it, right? So, say any compilation of information, it qualifies as a trade secret when it has some kind of edge over your competitor. One. Second, it should be able to generate some revenues for you, right? What is a classic example of trade secret that is very well known?
Formula.
Sorry. Right. How have they been able to maintain it a secret? How do you think Coca-Cola company has been able to maintain it as a secret? Not really. But how? Think. Split up what? Not really. If you split up, mixing is going to be challenged, right? Every time you want to even create one bottle of Coke, how are you going to mix in what proportion? No, not necessary. How do you think Coke has been able to, Coca-Cola company has been able to keep that a trade secret? Do you know how much money they spend keeping that as a trade secret? First question is that, because everything boils down to money, right? Take a wild guess. Quick.
10% of the
Not really. Okay, I'll tell you a very random number. You can go and research more because I'm sure all of you are researchers. They spend a few $1 million every year to keep that co-concentrate a secret. So the way they have been able to keep that concentrate a secret is they keep it, the concentrate comes to the factories in sealed containers, right? The moment anyone tries to break the seal, the coke concentrate gets adulterated. So that's how they have been able to keep it a secret, and no one has been able to reverse engineer. So the way they have designed it is that sealed container gets attached into the bottling plant directly. Known concentration of concentrate is mixed with aerated water and then bottled and packaged and marketed. That's how they've been able to keep it a secret. So any compilation of information, it can be your customers, it can be your price list, it can be your research, anything that has an economic value and which can and should be kept a secret would qualify as a trade secret, right? So three most important things for any compilation of information to qualify as a trade secret is: one, the information has to be kept a what? Secret. And how is that possible? It should be known only to a limited number of people, right? And third is it should have an economic value, and the onus lies on the owner to keep that information a secret, right? So this is trade secret. Any questions related to trade secret? How is it enforced in India? How do you think you can protect your trade secrets? What is the life of trade secrets? Any idea? Yeah, life is perpetual. As long as you can keep it a secret, it remains a secret. And how do you enforce it in India? It's through, again, contracts and agreements. So any information that you want to protect, that you think is confidential, you could protect it through contracts. So legal protection in India for trade secrets is the only way is through contracts, right? So couple of other types of IPs, again, in the research scenario and startups. Copyright is one of them. What is copyright? But it's copyright, right? Right to copy, right? That's what people think. That's the answer that I get, all the sessions. Copyright is right to copy. What is copyright? Limited to whom? To what? Not really. What type of creations of mind does copyright protect?
Literature,
Right. And
kind of a reproducible artwork, something.
any artwork, it may be reproducible, it may not be reproducible. Right. So anything that is in the form of an expression, right? Poem, art, literature, books, paintings, digital content, right? All this can be protected through copyright. Okay. What are trademarks? Again, relevant to startups and educational institutes or any startup.
Brand, representation of brand.
Right. So anything, any symbol, expression, or combination that uniquely identifies your business or your service or your product is a trademark. What is a patent?
Patents are mostly for products.
Okay, and huh? Okay, and
Process.
okay, and done, or anything else? People said product, process, ideas. What else? Solutions. What are these? What are all these? Be it a product or a process or an idea. I already gave you the answer in my previous statement.
The people have come up.
Expression of idea.
Expression is protected by copyright, right? The idea or the technical solution itself can be protected by patents. So when we defined intellectual property, what did we say? Creations of mind, right? Creations of mind can be in the form of expressions. It can be technical solutions. It can be ideas. So whatever you said, right? Idea, invention, what are all these? These are nothing but solutions to one or more problems. So patents protect solutions, right? It can be one or more solutions to a problem. All these can be protected through patents, right? So what exactly is patent according to you, or whatever you have known? This gentleman said that he has filed a few patents, and that madam also said that she has filed or she was involved with patents. I'm sure some others also may have, given it a shot or at least tried to know what a patent is. So what is the patent? How do you define a patent?
Document which contains what it claims.
Kind of, yes. What is that you're claiming? But
Whatever you that we have developed is not existent before.
okay, now I will make a statement. You tell me what I'm trying to claim or protect here. I'll say I have patented AI. Is it the right way of putting or expressing what I want to say? And when I say or let's say if I say I've patented wireless technology, or I've patented medical informatics technology, what does it mean?
Right problem statement
Hmm.
and what solution you're going to develop that in terms of novelty.
Okay, and
Yeah.
okay, we'll come to that later on. But what does patent actually do?
It's a legal framework to protect your ideas.
For certain duration, it will protect for certain.
No, duration is fine. My question is more specific to what is a patent. How would you define a patent? Right, we define intellectual property, right? Like that, how would you define a patent? What does it protect? I already told you this. No.
It's just the safeguards your lot of ideas.
It's what? See, it protects. Patent is nothing but an exclusive right to a solution for a problem. Simple. Right? You have a problem, you may have one or more solutions. Patent is an exclusive right to protect that, right? What is IP? IP is nothing but a right? Looks like people had too much lunch and now they are sleeping, right? So what is a patent? How would you define it? Go on. I gave you the definition, right? You just have to. Yeah, it's an exclusive right for a solution to a problem. Okay. So when you file a patent, let's say you filed a patent and you got a grant for the patent. What are the rights that you get as a patent holder? To what? Okay, fine. What kind of exclusive rights do you get?
Monetize
Sorry.
to make money from it.
Okay. And okay. Why? What rights do you get as a patent holder when you file for a patent? Do you get any rights? Yes, no.
You can stop other people.
Okay, so is that your right
That's my.
or it's your negative right?
My as in patent holder to stop other people using my.
Right. So you are not getting any right, right? You don't get the right to manufacture. You don't get the right to sell it, produce it. You can prevent others from doing all these activities, right? Selling, making, offering to sell, right? Importing the patented invention in which you have a patent, right? And all types of IPs that we have talked till now are restricted to a specific jurisdiction or a country. So wherever you file the IP, your rights are restricted to that country. There is no concept of global IP. This is one more myth that you need to clear from your head. I'm sure many people may have told you in the past that there is global patent, there is North American patent, and there is Asia patent and all that. All those things don't exist. There's only European patent that has now come into existence this year. They call it a unitary patent, where you can file a unitary patent and get protection in 25 countries. So only European Union has it. And that has come into existence only this year. Earlier, it did not exist. Okay. So patent is actually a negative right. You are not getting any rights directly, but you get rights to exclude others from doing certain activities. And these activities are making, using, selling, offering to sell, or importing the patented invention. Right? So, any questions related to trade secrets, patents, copyright, and trademark before we move ahead with licensing? Yeah, go ahead.
Trademark, is it like country wise or is?
Yes, all types of IPs are country wise. Wherever you file, your protection is limited there.
Make an application to the source code and which category?
So source code would qualify under, you can protect the source code under copyright. The functional or operational aspects of the app could be protected via patents. Yeah, one.
Suppose you said it also stop someone from importing it.
Right.
It's fine. So can I actually find?
No, you cannot. So, like she said, there are three things, right? One is novelty, second is utility, third is the inventive step. So novelty means new in the entire world. So whenever you file a patent application, the patent application is going to be examined against everything that is out there, everything that can be electronically accessed, right? It can be a publication in the form of a newspaper article or a journal article or a blog article or a patent itself, right? So anything that can be accessed electronically, that is searchable anywhere in the world, and this rule applies to everywhere, all the jurisdictions, all countries. You cannot get a patent for that. So you as an innovator, if you want to protect your inventions, I was going to cover that in strategy. If you want to protect it in beyond where you are living or beyond, let's say, India, you have 12 months to do that. So there's a hard stop timeline. Even if you filed your own application listing yourself as the inventor on the 13th month, your prior filed application, patent application in whichever jurisdiction you filed, can be cited as a prior art to your application in the country that you filed after 12 months. So that's how the process is designed.
according to country wise.
Right.
Now it's better in the US, for some product. So how can I use that if it is not, so can I sell it?
Technically, yes, you can. If they have not filed, so I was going to cover that in the, like I said, the strategy part. How do you decide where to file, what to file? So if you don't file in one country, I know people will say, what is the point in filing IP? China will anyway copy. That's why I have that specifically on my slide. It should be a part of your strategy. When you are a small company, maybe you don't have the budget, maybe you are overlooking that aspect, where other country may or may not copy it. You may be under the assumption that if somebody else copies, it's okay, they'll do it in their country. So I will come to that when we'll be talking about IP strategy. Any other questions related to these 4 topics? Patents, trademarks, copyright, and trade secrets. I'll tell you. We are coming to that. Any questions? Or should we move on?
Just one question in terms of legal documents. How is the contract different from agreement?
Ma'am, they are protected under different laws. So there are different acts and laws. Each one has its own clause. So like the patent. So if you look at the patent or copyright or trademark, each of them has a separate act. Likewise, even contracts and agreements come under different legal this thing.
How to decide which one we should accept?
It's fine, ma'am. There is no hard and fast rule. See, generally it is the way you word it, right? And the jurisdiction in which you want to seek protection. So generally, most of the times they are used interchangeably, the terms, agreements, and contracts. So contract is generally between, let's say, an employee and employer, right? Agreement may be between peers, maybe a employee-employer. So contracts is when you're hiring, let's say this you say, right? I'm hiring a contract employee. So what would be the terms of the contract? You would be defining. So that would come under contract law. Agreement is again, let's say you are entering into an agreement or you are using a service, or say for example, take your phones itself, right? The apps that you install, you click next on all screens and say I accept. What are you doing? You are accepting to the agreement terms that the software has listed without even reading it, right? And then you complain saying that they are stealing my data, they are tracking me. But you yourself have given that permission. So whenever you are clicking next on any of the screens where there is fine text, spend some time to read what's written there. Yeah.
In case of NDA, because we are using it for brainstorming. So then that points are not there in NDA, right? We are developing that point. So how that other person can claim that I came up with that idea?
You can, that's what I said, right? You can define it saying that whatever is going to be discussed between us.
But how do we do that we discuss it this time?
So you can capture. You can capture that in the document, you can record it, but then recording is not a very strong form of protection. Right? There are a lot of softwares that you can use and edit and create your own recordings. So it's always good to have some kind of solid written thing. Always written things work better. Right? Any other questions? Should we go to licensing? Why is licensing there? Identify your IP. Anyone? What is licensing? Huh? Okay, what is the license?
They can manufacture and do some pay some money for this.
Okay, and what else? Why is licensing there and identify your IP? First question is that. Why do you think it is listed there? Take a wild guess. All IP boils down to commercialization, right? But why have I listed it under identify your IP licensing? What you said is right. I mean, you give out the rights of your IP in terms of royalty, whatever agreement you have with the party that you're going to license to.
Because license also excludes others from.
No, no,
I believe identified, if I'm right.
not really. Any other answers? Take that depends on you. I mean, if your last name ends with A and I, which is Ambani or Adani, then you can give it for free, right? You need not charge anything. No, that has nothing to do with licensing. What can you license? When can you license? Yeah, generally granted has stronger, let's say, enforcement rights than just the published one or just the filed one. But why is licensing listed there? Identify your IP. No, licensing is that. It's about you're giving the permission to somebody else to do something, right? But why is it listed there? My question is that. Think out of the box. So this session is not meant for, like I told you, it's not about me, it's about you. You need to put your gray matter at work. Not really. See, I'll tell you the answer that I was looking for. See, generally what happens, we believe that we should protect only what we are doing, right? That is kind of okay when you are beginning your journey with the IP, but then you should also think tangentially. If somebody was to steal this invention, steal this idea and build something much better, maybe a refined version of it, how would they do it? Right? So I ask this question to the inventors that I work with. If I were to steal your invention and rebuild it, how would I do it? I want you to think, because you will have not thought in those lines. For you right now, whatever is there in front of you, that is pile of gold. Right? It is not true. So when you think differently, you have a lot of options, lot of solutions may emerge out, right? That is when you build a portfolio that is listed under devise and implement. So how does your IP portfolio build? When you have a problem, when you have a solution, and then you start making incremental improvements to the solution and file and protect those solutions. That is when you build a portfolio, right? Anyone who has not used Uber or Ola here? Raise your hand. I said not used, not used. Everyone has used, right? So what happens when you try to book a cab? It will take a source, whatever destination you select, it will give you the time and the fare. How do you think that computation happens? There is some intelligence running, right, behind, maybe in Uber server, not in your phone, not in your phone's app, but in the Uber server. Do you know how many different combinations Uber has protected, filed patents just for routing from source to destination? And these are all granted patents. You can go and verify that. There are more than 200 granted patents just for routing between source and destination. So all different combinations that you can humanly think of, Uber and their team has thought and built, and they have fortified that space. So now anyone who would enter into that space, into that business, would be infringing some algorithm or the other, right? When you have 200 plus, definitely they will have something that they have thought of and have sought protection. So even they may not implement it, right? They may be using only one solution, but then they have 199 or 200 different solutions that they have sought protection that they can license out. So you need to identify this. This is what this is what happens when you evolve in your IP journey, right? It is not restricted to the solution you are building, the product you are building, but then everything around it. That is how you are able to fortify your research or the problem that you're solving and trying to build a portfolio. That is when, so when you're going to license, it's not the one patent that people are interested in buying. If you have 10 around that, the valuation goes up, the value of the portfolio goes up, and that is when you are able to leverage on it. So it is very, very important to keep this in mind. Always look at having a strategy to build a portfolio eventually. You may start with one, right? What happens in a lot of research institutes, especially when there is grant coming from somewhere, there is technology involved and all that. People work on different problems in different instances of time, right? And they create IP also, but then it's in an umbrella. There is no concentration. So what happens in such a case? You are not able to license it. There are a lot of institutes, lot of companies who have built IP like this and have not been able to license because they have too much diversified portfolio. So you need to have this as a strategy and learning from the day you start working on solving a problem, right? What are the possible solutions? Is there any IP that exists in these solutions? Can I protect? Where to protect? How to protect? All of that, you should at least start thinking on those lines. You may not have answers to everything right there, but at least having them in front of you on a paper will help you in the process, right? So moving on, what is the IP strategy?
So one question for that.
Yeah.
So as Uber have taken all the possibilities which they would have already executed or not, but their possibilities. So does that go same in a product when you patent it? You might think of a lot of possibilities which are not there in the product yet. But you file, you patent it. But let's say your product does 3 things, but your patent tells about like 20 different things. So those two are different actually when you look at the product. It's just a subset of it.
Correct. So the way you should build the portfolios, you should see which are the most important features of your product, right? They are protected. Now let's take an example of a pen, right? A pen can have, let's say pen and refill, right? Refill can have different colors, right? And it can have different caps, different color caps. So pen is your main product, right? Now your protected pen, what features are you going to look at protecting? Is it inventive? Do you need to get an evaluation done? Just don't blindly go and fight. You need to do a thorough evaluation. Now let's say, you know, pen comes in black, blue, green, red, all these colors. These are all known, right? Is there any other color that doesn't exist in the world that you have created, right? Using which your pen would work. You should look at filing a patent for that. That would make more sense than filing individual patents for a red or a green or a blue, right? Those color of refills and caps would be anyway covered in the main patent itself. You can try to get protection, but then if you are able to create the pen in such a way that it is be able to do something else, right? Apart from writing. I'll give you a very wild example. I went for a presentation in Dayanand Sagar Architecture College. last Saturday, and there was this gentleman who gave me a wonderful idea. When I asked him this question, he said, "Your pen." I said, "Can you use the pen to stir your coffee?" And he said, "One inventive feature is it can, it has the ability to create froth." That is something inventive, right? Your pen can write, you can stir coffee from your pen and also produce froth from it. That is something different that you can look at protecting from by filing a different patent. Does that answer your question?
So whatever product you launch and you tag it as patented, it would be like a subset of the main patent.
It can be subset of main features. As the product evolves, there will be additional features. And when I'm saying features, it's not just as small as different color ripples. It is different functional, different operational aspects that is adding value to the problem being solved, simplifying the problem being solved, right? So those things you need to identify and try to protect. So that should be your typical strategy. So that is when you are able to license and make money. Okay.
So those becomes incremental patents, and your earlier work would become the prior art for that.
Not prior art. It need not be prior art. It can be incremental improvements. So the base can remain that. Whatever you build on top of that, it can be incremental or it can be totally different. It depends on the feature and how closely it's related to the base pattern. Those, though, you need to go to that level and define, and only then you can build a portfolio. Any other questions before we jump into strategy?
So suppose if you are saying that, and when we file a broad patent which has multiple steps and which are all incremental improvements on the base patent, when we have to defend our patent, don't we have to show all that all those are accomplished and it is really an innovation?
That is again governed by the law. So when you're showing when you're showing an improvement, you need not actually go back and refer to the base patent and say that this is what I had filed. Now this is an improvement over that. It can stand alone as a new solution. For you, it is improvement. For the world or the patent office, it can be a new invention itself. So it's the way you actually draft and file the application. So it depends on that. Some strategically file it, intentionally file it as only an improvement. They claim only the improvement part and it would be tied. So the family would be tied. But then you can do those improvements and draft and file it in such a way that it can be a part of the family, but then there is no direct relation or direct association saying that it's an improvement over the base. So it's the way one would draft and file it. It depends on that. So there are different strategies. So for example, if you look at, let me give an example of trademark. So you have series of trademarks, right? McDonald's has Mac Veggies, Mac this, Mac that, Mac Burger, Mac Chicken. So these are all series, right? The base owner is McDonald's, but then these are all sub. It may be improvements or related. But then when you see the name, you will be able to relate to McDonald's. So trademark is just a wild example. Patents also, you can have a similar strategy. You can either only file only for improvements in a specific technology or research area, or file it as a separate application and write it in such a way that there is the examiner or the world outside is not able to establish that relationship. You as an inventor will know it, but then someone externally may not be able to make that correlation and establish that relationship. Does that answer your question? What is strategy? Any other questions before we jump into strategy? Quickly, what is strategy? Everybody talks about it, right? Right. And okay, and anything else? It need not be protect. I'm talking leave IP. What is strategy in general? Dictionary meaning of strategy. Yeah, it is a plan with a purpose, right? The purpose can be anything. It can be an outcome, it can be something else. It can be defined immediately, or it can be defined in the near future, right? So existing and contemplated IP. So what does this mean? I gave you an example of Uber, right? The problem that they were trying to solve was basic. They had a solution for that. When can you contemplate? When you know that the problem, the initial problem, the solution that you have built can be improvised, right? So you have to be open and think tangentially to know about it. So you should be able to identify, get a proper evaluation done, and make the determination whether it's worth filing for the IP or not. So this will come once you start filing IP regularly. This maturity or evolution will come once you start filing regularly. You will need hand holding initially, and once you reach a certain level, you'll be able to identify and do it automatically by yourself, right? So I've already given you an example of Uber about this particular concept. Potential exposure to others' IP. What is this? What does it infer? It's in simple, plain English, right? What does it mean?
Using others IP.
Not really. Not directly. Dotted line maybe yes. When can you potentially get exposed to others' IP? Need not be. What if you don't know that there is an IP that exists?
Part of the solution.
Part is fine, but then when is this scenario, or when does this come into picture?
They claim. They find it.
You know, think. It's simple, plain English, right? Potential exposure to others' IP. Think. Quick. Let's say you're building a product or a solution and you don't know. A lot of people come, the inventors that I interact, the first sentence they come and tell me is something like this doesn't exist in the world at all. Right? This is the first thing. Right? It may not be existing in the street in which you are staying. Right? It may not be existing in the city in which you are staying. It may not be existing in the country in which you're staying. But it can exist elsewhere, right? Possibility is there, right? Like you, there are 8 billion humans who can think. Yes, no. So potentially, can there be any IP that can exist that you may prospectively infringe? Possibility exists, right? So you should be open about it when you are building a solution. So all the large companies like the big Samsung, Nokia's, or any tech company which is building a product. So they always get what is known as a freedom to operate search done. Freedom to operate will give you a landscape of all the IP that you may potentially infringe in the future. Right? So why do you think they are doing that exercise? How does it help? You learned about licensing, right? It is related to that. I gave you a hint also. Now connect the dots.
Already existing, why would you patent it? Like you spend the whole.
No, I'm not talking about you patenting. You build the product. Now you know that you got a FTO done, freedom to operate study done. You realize that, okay, there are 10 important patents, maybe 7 or 8 are not that important, but 2 are very important. What would you do? You know that, forget about, I'm not talking about you filing a patent or getting an IP or not. You know that you have built the product, it's ready to ship out to the market, it's undergoing probably testing and trials and all that, and you are ready to ship it out, and you realize that there are 2 patents that are already there, which you may potentially infringe. What would happen? When would you take it? After launching the product or before launching the product? No. My question is very simple. You know you have built something and there is already IP there, right? You know that if you launch the product, it is going to infringe that product. How are you going to protect yourself against this scenario? What happens if you license it before? Huh? Okay, and
claim that it's patented because you're licensing that feature.
Not really. Think why you should consider doing this study, identify if there is any IP already that you may potentially infringe. How does it help you? No. Think. The answer is there on the slide itself. And we have already covered that point. So what happens if you infringe? He said, right, they will come and sue you, right? So you have 2 options, either to write off your product from the market or seek a license for it. What happens if you are trying to seek a license after infringement? You may end up paying more money to get the license. If you do a freedom to operate study before you launch the product, if you go and take a license, you are at a better position to negotiate the licensing fee. Right? So if you launch the product, you infringe the patent, that's when you are in a suit. You will not have the negotiating power. You will have to come to an agreement, the licensing terms, based on what the IP holder wants. But here you can, 1, consider negotiating, 2, before the product is launched, you can consider designing around the features or the product that is infringing. So that clarity you will have. This is very, very important. I know it is not predominantly practiced in India or any of the Asian countries, but most of the European and North American region, it works that way. Before a product is built and launched, they will do a search. They'll do a search to understand the landscape. They'll see whether they can generate any IP based on what they have built. One is that. Second, prospectively infringe, try to license or design around, and then they refine the product and then they launch it. Right?
One question.
Yeah.
Now we do a freedom to operate search and we find that the patent is expired.
Expired are no longer enforceable. After 20 years, you cannot enforce your rights. Yeah, you can take it. But my question is, why would you want to use a technology that is 20 years old?
So my question is, my answer is simple. We are like, in India as of now, electronic industry, we don't manufacture most of the products. It comes from outside. 20 years back, they have done that, have the patent 20 years back. It's expired in July. So if they can take up that and sell, there's a lot of huge market here in India.
You can do that. Once it expires, you can do that.
Can they enforce after 20 years?
No, they cannot.
This freedom to operate is kind of a legal document.
You will get a legal opinion from the person who will sign it. It can be a lawyer. Generally, lawyers would sign off such a document. And for funding, what we have come across, we have a European client. So they needed this study to be done for applying for funding because the funding agency had requested this information. They wanted to see how the product would be positioned against in the entire landscape, and their funding decision would be based, like it is not totally based on that, but one of the parameters for evaluation would be this. So it will give you an idea of the landscape, and then it will help them make a decision.
And that's again geography.
Yes, specific to geography. So if you're launching a product in Europe, you have to get a FTO done in Europe. If you're launching the product in India, you have to get a FTO done in India. That's how it works. If you're launching in India, FTO in US is not going to help you. But in future, if you're planning to go to the US market, it's good to do that exercise now. Right? So local and global, including China. What does this mean? $1 billion sentence, right? It is under strategy. How do you know? How do you decide where to file, what to file, when to file? I am a startup. I am, let's say, today in India. I have built a product. I filed in India. I got the patent granted. Never bothered to file outside. But suddenly I see that there is some interest generated from customers outside who are interested in getting that solution. What are your options? Can you go and file your patent? Let's say your patent was granted 2 years back, or maybe even 1 year back. And that 12-month window has expired. But I told you, right? You have to file within 12 months. Can you file it? Yes, no. If no, why? If yes, why?
12 months thing is expired, you can file it.
You cannot file. You said no. Yeah. You cannot file because if you file, your own application will become prior art. So how do you decide in such a scenario? What do you think should be a good strategy, or how would you think, or how would you strategically try to protect your product? Answer. No, related, that is in freedom to operate. Now I'm talking about strategy of filing. You filing IP. Yes. Correct. But how do you determine? How do you identify? Now let's say you are doing some research. You have a product. I say, okay, it's a good product. Let's file a patent in India. And tomorrow, you may go and publish it. Let's say someone from MIT or Harvard may see it, but school, and they will connect with you and say, let's collaborate and continue our research. Right? And those 12 months have lapsed. So how would you decide whether you want to file? You have not filed, right? You don't know in future with whom I'll collaborate, with whom I may work. In such a scenario, how would you decide or determine where to file? What IP, where to file? Be it trademark, be it patent. Correct. Depends where the market is. So identifying your market is very, very important. And you need to do a market research thoroughly, get it professionally done if you can, if you have the budget for it. I would suggest allocate budget for it and get it done. Identify your market, identify where you would be. Let's say if your solution is a software solution, which you say, okay, I'll deploy it in India, in server running in India. And there are people who are going to consume in Singapore or US or some other country. You may think that, you don't need protection in those countries because you are providing the service and solution from India. But what if there are potential competitors that would emerge from that region? What would you do at that time? So it's always good to identify your areas and start filing in those countries. I know it's going to be an expensive affair, but then the larger the risk, larger the returns, and larger the scope for protection. And every time I go for a presentation, either pre, during, or post presentation, first question: what is the point in filing IP? China will anyway copy it, right? That's why I have it on the slide. So China should be on your list. There was an article, I think around lockdown or post lockdown, in between lockdown. They said Chinese government, Chinese people openly said, if you think you are building something that is worth protecting and you don't want us to copy, please come and file it in our country also. We will respect it. And this was an open statement made by the Chinese people or Chinese government. So this is something that you seriously need to consider, right? A lot of people save costs. They don't have a strategy. They'll only target maybe 1 or 2 countries, maybe US, maybe Germany, maybe some other European country. China is never on the list. They file, and then once it gets copied and replicated and starts commercially being successful, that is when they realize, right? It's too late. So always have China on the list if you think that potentially you may enter into that market, or you may potentially expect some competitors emerging from that market. This is very, very important, right? Identifying your market and then coming up with a strategy, and you need to have a budget for it. This is very, very important. You need to allocate a specific budget, identify countries, and go ahead with filing. Any questions in strategy?
Globalization, anyway, the best strategy would be applied globally, right?
No, not necessary. Globalization is one part, but then you should identify one, where your market is. Second, which are IP strong countries, right? That is one more thing that you need to take into account. You cannot just go and file in Cambodia and Pakistan and Bangladesh and some other country where the IP ecosystem itself is weak, right? You may file it. I mean, how many competitors are you going to get from those countries? Africa, for example, how many competitors are you going to get from Africa? Right? People don't get 2 square meals to eat. Whether having Africa on your strategy, okay, if your product is such that, or solution is such that Africa, there is a potential market for you in Africa, definitely you should do it. Not otherwise. Which one? That's what I said, right? Identify potential markets. So when you're talking about internet and metaverse and all that, right? Digital, let's talk about digital economy. How would you identify? See, there are potential countries. US, in North America, US is prominent, right? In Europe, in Asia Pacific, maybe Singapore is one more country that you should be looking at. In Europe, probably UK, Germany, these are the countries that you should potentially look at. See, other small countries, they won't be too much bothered if you have coverage in all these countries, right? It's about how you deploy. If you are able to prove that you're deploying and your potential copy, whoever has copied it, is emerging, has roots from that region. If you are able to do that, you will always get protection, right?
One question. Regarding the trademark, what is the timeline for filing worldwide?
6 months after your first filing.
First filing.
First file in India, or first file in US, or first file in UK, you have 6 months within which you need to decide where all you want to file.
Otherwise,
the priority will not be applicable. The priority date filing that you get, that will not be applicable. IP is all about filing date when you file. So after 6 months, that priority date will expire.
and one question. I have a trademark for the company from India. Okay. Now, someone in US can sit and have a website in that name.
Correct.
How do we enforce that?
You should go and file your trademark there. Yeah. That's what I said, right? Identify your market. IP is about identifying the market and going and protecting your assets there. Potentially identify market. I can give you one more example. One of my ex-client, they had a similar name of an entity which was already trademarked in US. It was a Indian entity, but then they started, after 1 year, they went and started operating in the US because they found potential customers there. There was only one character, one letter difference between the name. I won't disclose what the name was. So, although they were in different businesses, the entity which held the trademark sent them a legal notice saying that shut down and get out of US or we'll drag you to a lawsuit. So when they approached, we offered saying that we'll change the name, we'll rebrand it and change the, they even had to even surrender the domain name because the domain name also was identical with only one character difference. Right? So these are the legal issues. You have to be a little diligent in doing this kind of study before you even go ahead and register your brand and start your business. Right? Any other questions related to strategy?
China is a great place to manufacturing. And for startups at the early stage when they want things to be manufactured, does contracts really work between the manufacturer?
Yes, you can enforce, but then you will have to have the dual jurisdiction. You need to have protection in India as well as China. You can enter into an agreement with them, but then exclusively both the jurisdictions should be covered. So it depends on the way the jurisdiction clause would be entered into the agreement. Any other questions? Should we move to devise and implement? Professional help. Why is this necessary?
You haven't done it before.
No?
You haven't done it before.
And even if you have done it, you have a history of filing patents, right? Can you go and write and draft and file by yourself? Do you think you're ready to do that?
Not
Yeah. Why? Very fast.
can still commit a lot of mistakes
Okay. And
and get potential suits.
that is at a later stage. But why don't do it yourself? Why you shouldn't do this? So since there is medical fraternity also, I'll give a simple example. Can you read a book on how to do heart surgery and do a heart surgery on yourself? Yes? Yes? No? Sure? Okay, I'll ask one more question then. Can you read a book on how to drive a car and actually drive a car? In Bangalore. When it rains, I'll make it even more sweeter.
That skill is necessary.
Alright,
That skill comes from the profession.
correct. There are professions for a reason, and however good you are, see, there's always someone who is skilled enough or more knowledgeable enough who will be able to do the job in a better way. So always try to seek professional help. You may have filed, I have a client who has filed more than 250 patents. I have a different level of discussion with him, but he still gives me the work and pays me to get the work done. Right? He can do it himself, right? To save the cost. And I'll not tell you how much I bill him for. So even though people have gone through the process, they know it. There's a reason why it should not be done, because there are laws that change, evolve. There are things that need to be taken care of, which only a professional working that particular field will know. Right? Engage early. This is very, very important. I think 7 or 8 out of 10 people fail here. They are waiting for what? No, they are waiting for dowry to decide when to file the patent, right? Dowry is just an example. So, lot of times, again, be it researchers' classic mistake is they'll do research, go and publish. They will never get a IP evaluation done. The moment you publish, you have relinquished your rights, right? You cannot get IP for it. Startups, they are cash strapped, they don't have funds. That's why I said they wait for dowry, which is in the form of funding, right? That funding can happen in 1 year or it may take 10 years. If you wait for 10 years, there is no way you can protect your right. Engage early, engage at every step, because this is very, very important. Getting early hand holding, realizing, learning things is very, very important. Don't do those mistakes, because IP is one thing where you cannot go and fix the mistake that you have done. Right? Once it's out there, it's over. So plan, budget, and strategize for developing an IP portfolio. This I already dotted line covered through the entire session. You need to identify the market, you need to identify potential regions, have a strategy, what IP you're going to file, whether you're going to file only trademarks, whether you're going to file only patents. So all this, you have to have some, at least not 100% clarity, but some roadmap, some clarity on a way forward. Right? So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation or talk, and can go ahead and ask questions on any of the topics.
In electronics field, can we patent electronic circuits, analog circuits?
Circuits, no.
So what can be done to protect it?
Protect in the sense, see, the functional and operational, see, analog circuit is what? It's an implementation of some form of solution, right? So we have to take a look whether that solution itself is patentable or not. Look at the solution, see the way you implement it, whether you put it on an analog circuit, you put it on a digital circuit, whether you put it on cloud, whether you put it on a phone app. These are all forms of implementation. They are not important. In IP, it is problem and solution. What is the problem? What is the solution? How you are solving it? Right? You may take help of external people, external components, external things, libraries, snippets, core snippets, or products itself, component sensors. All that is helping you to get some information, get some data, and then the way you are going to use that data, the intelligence that you are going to build on top of it, you have to see whether that is patentable or not. Right?
And wherever those particular implementation will be used, there we need to patent it based on the geography.
That's what you first identify, and then identify the potential market, and then file for patents in those jurisdictions. That's how you need to. Yeah, go ahead.
So now we have this blockchain technology, non-fungible tokens and all those things. So once I own an NFT or I create an NFT, that by default I have the copyright, or I can prove that I am the one who came up with that, came to that idea. So in that context, does IP should we apply for IP, or is it like automatically this?
No, you should generally apply. Copyright is one form of IP which does not necessitate you to apply, but then when it comes to this metaverse thing and all that, generally it's advisable to apply, because that is what would create the distinction, right? Because everyone is doing that, right?
And I can always claim that. How does it work? IP works in that context. Like, I can always claim that I have made, because the timestamp will be there all the time.
So you need to register it. If you want to enforce it, if you want a more stronger form of protection, you need to register. Yes.
If a solution to a problem already exists, And I have a very different way of working, which gives in a significant improvement. It is still an IT.
Yes.
And what is that IT? Is that the process or?
Yes, it can. Process is what? Process is method. See, I'll tell you one thing. There is again lot of fuzz confusion. Product patent, process patent, idea patent. These are nothing. These are only to confuse you. Okay. For me, patent is problem and solution. How you are solving it. What are the steps? See, if you look at a product, and you say product patent, what is the product patent? Are you claiming, when I say I'm claiming a watch, am I claiming the watch or the components of the watch and the way they are tied together and the way it is working and what is the outcome of that? That is a product patent, right? So can I express this as a process? Yes, it can be done.
Inventive step and utility which comes into, though it is not novel.
It may not be novel, it may not be novel, but then most important aspect is the inventive step. How is it technically distinct or technically advanced? Or if you're saying it's an improvement, how is it improved? How is it improved? Right? That improvement should be able to stand by itself. It should, yes. It should have its own legs, it should be able to stand by itself. That is when it would constitute as an IP or get granted as an IP. Any other questions?
Most of the products you're building might be already being built in foreign countries like few years back. But there is always this problem where affordability comes and people try to innovate around it. So let's say the companies are not patented in India, you still have the right to manufacture and sell it in India. Correct.
Yeah.
But there is a problem when you go to the other foreign countries. But like I'm just putting it straight. So there is no point building the same product if they have already covered it in India.
I'll simplify your question. Okay. I have a Maruti in India. Can I get a patent for Maruti in US? Right? Just because it's cheaper. Because it's built in India. Cheaper, should I go ahead and patent it there? Or can I get a patent there? The answer to that is economic reduction in cost. So that improvement that I'm talking about, technical improvement, it should be distinct. It cannot be related to cost, right? I know a lot of people filed a lot of patents for masks, ventilators and all during the lockdown. They have not seen the light of the day and they will never see, because these are something that are already existing, right? What the patent office in every country would look at is what is the product or the process, what are the functional steps, what are the operational steps, do they meet the criteria of novelty, inventive step and utility? That's all. You cannot attach saying that, they are using a, let's say 3M or a Bosch pipe and I'm using a local LPG pipe to get the same thing done. They say that cannot get your patent. So reinvented wheel, cheaper costs, right? Causes, I'm solving a global problem. Hunger or poverty for that matter of fact. These are all social problems. Socio-economical problems, you cannot get patents for that. Whatever is the, how good your solution is, how you have implemented, there is significant improvement, all those things, they are all marketing jargons, good for building your image, building your brand, but they are not good for getting your patent.
But still it would be valid in India as such, because government.
No. Cost, that's what I'm saying you. Patent Act doesn't say any product process that will reduce cost, you should give a patent. It will still do the evaluation based on novelty, inventive step and utility. Now, you have extra cash to pay the examiner and get it granted, that's a different story. I don't want to go into that discussion. So, but then going by the process, technically you cannot get the patent granted just by reducing the cost. If it is an improvement,
Cost using some novelty or Indian.
no. See, any patent,
Same.
no, any patent, have you seen any, let's say, product patent, Apple files, have you seen any mark saying made in California, USA in the patent application or any publication? No, right? It doesn't matter where it's built, what it is doing, how it is doing. These are the only two things. And they should meet the criteria of novelty, inventive step, and utility.
Any examples with health related technologies given?
Plenty of them. You tell me. So many startups that I work are in healthcare. Most of them AI, IoT related. They are everybody is getting data, the same data, patient vitals, blah blah blah, monitoring, remote monitoring, hospital data. They're trying to build intelligence on top of hospital data. How whatever intelligence they are building, how it is creating value, how it is helping them change or adopt new techniques, new processes which will help in overall functioning of the hospital itself. Lot of AI and medtech startups are around this technology. Using these technologies, they are playing around with the data. So IoT is common. I mean, they are reading data from everything that you're wearing, right? Your phone, your watch, and then doing tens of different things on that and producing a new app, presenting it in a different way, making money. Right? Any other questions? Anything else? You have my coordinates there. You can reach me on the email address and the phone number. Between 8 and 8. My phone automatically goes on silent after 8 p.m. So yeah, you can feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you for coming on midweek.
Yeah, I hope the session was useful and we can have more sessions. Please encourage your colleagues, friends to join. And I'm sure they'll learn something new. We'll try to have as many sessions as possible where the GAN is given and you make use of the GAN, right? In the right way.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for having these sessions here at we'll continue to have you back up in the center. And you want we will be having more session cycles going forward. Sessions here first, and he is actually getting more offers and more work. I'm not sure how long it's continuing for the
Yeah, the free offering will end soon, which I only bill in dollars. I don't bill in INR. So the choice is yours. Yeah. Make hay while the sun shines.
There's some coffee served out. Because
Now I can see the picture of these are the
can contact me directly.
I might write them.
Thank you. I'm sitting in the offices here in Chennai. Yes, we have a co-working place. Which was pretty much seated here. Yeah, mostly daily, occasionally I get client meetings, but then we have to meet. Definitely. Yeah.